Thank you for the wonderful introduction. Good morning. I think it's unbelievable to see the number of people and the number of entrepreneurs. I think a whole bunch of people actually raised your hands when the question was asked who the founders are. So let me go one step deeper. How many of you as founders or entrepreneurs are doing B2C kind of companies? I just want to get an understanding of the ratio. How many of you are doing enterprise or B2B kind of companies? Oh, wow. That's my area. That's very, very interesting. It's actually great to see the attempt, right, that's being made to get into this B2B, because personally, I don't fund any B2C kind of companies. And I also understand more of the B2B. And personally, I also feel B2C is more like Las Vegas, you know. So you never know. If you think a company is going to succeed, that's the first company to fail. If you think a company is going to fail, that's the first company to succeed, which get acquired. I mean, you know, these examples that you saw, companies getting acquired for billions of dollars. So I stay away from the B2C kind of companies, and I focus more on B2B. And interestingly, because there are so many people who raise the hand, I've been involved with Thai, Silicon Valley, especially the last couple of years. And we have just kicked off an initiative, which we're going to launch next year, but I'm going to pre-announce it. We're starting this thing called the $1 Billion Babies. This is coming out of the Thai Silicon Valley. And the objective is, you know, there's a bunch of companies that have originated in India. And given the fact that the world is becoming more and more flat, obviously, there are a lot of opportunities for Indian entrepreneurs to bring their product and solutions to global markets. And as they bring to US or to any other country, I mean, especially in our case, bringing these companies to the US, there's a lot of hurdle that entrepreneurs face bringing these solutions to the global market. So we want to help these entrepreneurs who have that dream of bringing these companies to global markets and then launch it from the international, from US or whatever. And we want to help at least in the early stages. And you know, I've been involved with a couple of companies which originated from India and then which have migrated into the US and doing well. So we want to take that as a role model and help many other entrepreneurs, right, who are basically looking at that challenge. And by the way, these sponsorships that you have here, it's kind of fascinating to see. And some of them actually have Indian entrepreneurs, although most of the companies that you see here are all US-based. Yodlee, which is one of the early companies that I funded as well, had an Indian entrepreneur. And I would like to see, probably starting next year, some of the Indian companies that are born out of here and becoming global to sponsor NASSCOM. How about that? Can we take that challenge? I think we can. I think it'll be fascinating to see the progress being made year after year, as it's not just the number of people who attend, but I think it's equally important that we give back so that more entrepreneurs could benefit out of it. So we heard some amazing presentations since morning. And I thought, having done many companies, personally myself, and having been involved as an investor, so obviously I have seen many successes and failures as well. But if you look at, there is a common thread, right, across these companies. So I thought I'll just share with you with some of the anecdotes from my own experience over the last 20 years of this entrepreneurial journey that I can share with you. And hopefully, you know, if you can pick something out of that, and as Anupam was saying, it's all about what not to do, right? I think that's the most important thing that we need to learn. So if you look at, there is a fine line between success and failure when you're building these companies. And ultimately, it all translates to people. People are the ones who understand and make those changes and navigate the company during these challenging moments. Now, I feel that there are 4 key pillars that are very important from an entrepreneur perspective. The number 1 is the product itself. So the mindset of an entrepreneur, it's very important to think from a customer perspective. I mean, I meet so many entrepreneurs, and somehow many of them get stuck or hung up on technology. They think that having a great technology is a great way to build a company. No. Technology is just a component. It is important. Technology is important because that's what actually gives you the differential. Somebody asked the question earlier. That's what gives you the differential. But that's not what is going to make a company. It's the product, and a product that actually solves a real problem for a customer. So think of like, are you a painkiller or are you a vitamin? Right? So it's important to understand, as you're building this product, is this relevant in solving a problem to a customer? Or is this something that is a nice to have from a customer perspective? And let me tell you, if you think that this product is a nice to have, everything becomes complicated. Your sales cycle becomes complicated. Adoption of your product becomes complicated. It just takes enormous amount of time. So you have to learn very quickly, reading the feedback from the customers to see whether the product that you have built, is this a real painkiller or is this just a vitamin? That is a nice-to-have product or is this a must-have product? So let me tell you my own experience. I mean, as we did NetScaler, the original concept of why we started NetScaler, I mean, when I funded early on, was the fact that internet was growing at an exponential pace. We wanted to have a technology that actually helps to scale and in terms of bringing in efficiency within the servers. So this founder came up with this idea of optimizing TCP/IP protocol that helped to reduce the number of transactions that happen in the server. As a result, the overall transactions can be dramatically increased. So we built this technology, and this is like in 2000, 2001 timeframe when you were seeing the meltdown of the .com. And I'm pitching this product. So the value proposition of the product is I can basically reduce the number of servers, right? By using the NetScaler technology that works with your existing infrastructure, I can help reduce the number of servers within your data centers. That's the value proposition. Now, I'm pitching this to many of the CTOs, and I still vividly remember the conversation that I was having with the CTO of Charles Schwab. I'm pitching to this guy about how our technology works and how we can reduce the servers in the data centers by optimizing the TCP/IP protocol. So he looked at me and he said, Mr. Jagadeesh, let me show you a chart of what the number of transactions that we had in 99, in 2000, and what the expected transaction that was going to happen in 2001. Literally, the curve was like this. And he said, so this is like in 2000, end of 2000, or maybe middle of 2001. So he said, I have built my infrastructure to handle this kind of a growth. And come middle of 2001, when we were having this conversation, the bubble had already crashed, and the real traffic had literally fell off the cliff, literally. So here I am, pitching a NetScaler solution to the customer, right? Saying, Mr. Customer, I can save you the number of servers. The customer says, my friend, I've already built the infrastructure to handle this kind of a growth. What am I going to do with all the servers that I have? If you want, you can actually go take and maybe sell some of the servers that we have in the data center. what do? You've raised a lot of money, and we have built a technology solution that we felt that was going to solve the problem for the customer, and it's not even useful at that time. So, but we believed that this technology could be applicable to other kinds of solutions. So what did we do? We could have just returned the money back to the investors. Instead, we decided that let's just turn around and see what useful product that we can build. So we took another year to come back, re-engineer, and introduce a flagship product, which is essentially the same product that exists even today as well, right? Building more functionalities and security and all those things, which are a lot more essential. We went back and pitched to the customers, middle of 2002, and that took off. So today, if you look at NetScaler is one of the only 2 players in that market with almost close to $1 billion in revenues, which has provided employment to almost 2,000 people between US and India and other places. It's fascinating. It's a great feeling for an entrepreneur to have done something that has created wealth for a lot of people, has solved a real problem. But the point is, it's the people who kind of figured out, right, how to take a nice-to-have kind of a product into a useful product. So this happens literally in every company. Because when you see the success of many of the companies, when you read the success stories of many of these companies, right, you always tend to think, you started here, and then the success is here. It's almost like a straight line. But let me tell you, there is not a single case that I know of where it has been a straight line from the time where you started to where you landed as a success. It's always a zigzag, always. There's a lot of things that you go up and down, and a lot of things that you learn during the process. And the smart guy is the one who figures out how to navigate to get to that success. And the one who does not is the one who will fail. That's why I said there is this fine line between success and failure. So the second is about the execution. Execution is so key, right? So just because you have built a product, it doesn't mean it's going to succeed. So there is a methodology. There is a methodology. How do you win the first 20 customers? I tell you, that is the most difficult part of building a business. How do you win that first 20 customers, right? It's your personal connections, it's your investors' connections, it's how you network in events like this and generate the leads. There are tons of cases, tons of examples of how each individual entrepreneur figures out how to win that first 20 customers, because that's what actually helps you to move to the next level, right? And then scaling to the next level beyond that 20 customers. Third, this is something that I observe many times, the lack of attention from many entrepreneurs, which is the fiscal or the financial responsibility. So you have to treat the dollar that you have in your account as the last dollar that you can spend. How do you stretch the money that you have, whatever you have, as long as possible? I mean, even in case of NetScaler, we came to a state where we were literally weeks away from shutting down. But the fact that we managed our cash, we got the company to stretch beyond what we could have done through various means, cost cuttings and this, that, and all that stuff, right? Which is what actually helped us to get to a stage where we had enough proof points to go and convince a top-tier venture capitalist to fund us at the end of 2002. And look at the example of the success today, right? It would have been so easy. We could have just blown up the money and the company would have probably shut down. But that's not what has happened. By managing the cash and treating that as a very, very important aspect. The fourth is building the people network. Let me tell you, as founders and CEOs, you will soon realize that you are a very lonely person. You become very lonely. There are a lot of things you cannot share even with your co-founders. Forget about co-founders. You cannot even share with your own family members. Okay? So it's important to build people network, mentors, people that you can trust, where you can bounce off your challenges, right? And forums like this, as you hear people talk, give their examples, you know, all of you are smart. You already know most of these things. But what this helps is to reiterate the challenges that you are going through, the issues that you are going through, right? And you meet with different people and brainstorm, and it's a matter of reiteration. So it's so important, right, to have these 4 different pillars, what I call. Number 1, building a product that solves a problem, which is not a nice to have, but a must have. Second is the execution aspect of it, right? Going step at a time, and each step is a challenge by itself, but overcome that. Number 3 is the financial discipline, and number 4 is building this people network, right? I believe these are the 4 key pillars. If we start following this in a disciplined manner, you have a good chance of building successful companies. Otherwise, as somebody mentioned, 90 or 95 companies out of 100 fail. So you would be one among that 95, and you don't want to be. You don't want to be one of that because it's very painful. It's okay, ultimately, if you fail because you gave your best and you could not succeed, but you learned a lot during the process. That's a different story. But making these mistakes, which are obvious that people like us have learned, right? So don't make the same mistakes that others have made. Make new mistakes. It's okay. It's okay to make new mistakes, but don't just keep making the same mistakes that others have made. So I think given these things, right, what is exciting is to see the number of entrepreneurs, the number of companies that are coming up in India. I have no doubt that in the next few years, taking Israel as an amazing example, seeing the number of successes. In fact, I always keep talking about the Israel model as the one that we should really look at seriously as to how we can emulate the Israel model and build success. Especially, it's important for us to build companies that are global, right? That's when the recognition comes. So there is enough support, there is enough mentorship, there is enough dollars that's available, and how do you leverage that to build these successful companies? And I have heard this myth from many of the entrepreneurs here. Oh, this idea that I have, if I take it to Silicon Valley and then just drive around Sand Hill Road, people will give me money. Let me tell you, that doesn't happen. There are hundreds and thousands of people like yourself with ideas, even over there, who don't get funded, right? So there is a process, there is a methodology, and you have to figure out, and especially if you're a first-time entrepreneur, it is hard to raise the money. I mean, when we did our first company, first 2.5 years, we had no funding. We had a consulting company that generated the revenues, which we funded back into Exodus, and that's what led to the Exodus success. So it's challenging. Building a company is not easy. If it is easy, everybody would do it. Right? Because it's hard, right? Ultimately, only few people can do, and even in that few people, you want to build successful companies and take advantage of these kind of forums, It's fascinating, actually, to see what you guys are doing here. And I just want to offer this, the Thai Silicon Valley initiative, which should help many of the companies here. And I look forward to working with you and helping build more companies from India, go global, and bring pride to everybody. And once you succeed, don't just stop there, right? Do more things and figure out how to give back to the community. Thank you.
So quick question, BV, on Exodus. What was the one top learning you had at Exodus? You talked about NetScaler, but Exodus went through one of these and do the bubble and then burst. What did you learn from there?
I think the biggest challenge at Exodus was the lack of the financial discipline. So we ended up getting somebody that we thought could fill in the experience that we did not have. And I think what we missed out was bringing on a person because a person is highly visible or well-known. That doesn't really mean the person has the execution skills. So ultimately, it was the lack of the financial discipline. If the financials were managed properly, given where Rackspace is, given where Equinix is, we would be still like a #1 company.
Great. A quick question for Jagadeesh here. Go ahead, shout it out.
Any ideas on how we can move from vitamins to painkillers?
So any ideas on how to move from vitamins to painkillers? Okay.
I think that's why I gave you the example, right, of NetScaler, and I'll be very happy to share with you many other companies that have gone through this. And the key thing is to read from customers and don't get hung up. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they get hung up that what I'm solving is a painkiller, right? They don't read from the customers that it's just a nice to have. So where you read that is someone goes through a proof of concept, evaluates your product, goes through all the testing, still there is no purchase order, right? That means there is no skin in the game for the customer to actually allocate the dollar from somewhere to your product. That is the key test. So how do you determine that, and how early can you determine? And figuring that's the key thing.
Great. Thank you so much. I think, okay, we'll take one last question. Go ahead.
Hi, sir. You spoke about Indian startups going global. How and to what extent it is so important to be in places like US or to actually go global, or is it really possible that we can be in India and still go global and the world will accept it?
Oh, very good question. I think the question is, if you want to build a global company, can you just stay in India itself and then build a global company, right? To launch the product. Yeah. Which company to launch the product? So let me tell you, some of the examples of companies that I have dealt with. So not necessarily it's important for you day one to actually launch. In fact, this is the biggest advantage that you have in India today, because India itself is a destination market, and there are quite a few early adapters. So if your product fits that model, my recommendation is sell your product and build that initial 15, 20, 30 customers right here in India, and then you bring that to the US. So that way, in a as low cost as possible, you have actually built a product and you have validated the product, right? That becomes a huge value, huge value. So think of, to get to that stage, right, if you were to build a company in the US, probably that will take $10 to $12 million. If you could actually do that in $2 to $3 million, right, then you can keep that equity yourself and share that with employees. So you will have a better ownership in the end and having achieved the same stuff. So it also helps later on when you want to establish your global operations, right, to bring the right set of people to, in terms of joining you to help you scale the business, or in terms of getting the next set of venture capitalists to fund you, right? A lot of this proof point will actually help.
Great. Thank you so much, BV.
Thank you. Thanks for calling me.